So we had total of 9 startups that were supposed to join today, right?
Yes, we had
Is it
around
9?
registrations. I think we have 15 people who have joined. We
Okay.
could start.
Okay, fantastic. Good afternoon and welcome everybody. My name is Prashant. I'm the consultant to the World Bank for the Transport4All Challenge. And the World Bank is the knowledge partner for the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, which is hosting this challenge along with ITDP, Startup India, SIX, and who else? ASRTU. So welcome you all for this wonderful session. And then to begin with, I congratulate all of you to get shortlisted for this challenge. As you might know, we have 8 problem statements that we are dealing with. And today's session is about transit performance analytics. So before I go further into the subject and then introduce the speakers and everything, before that, I would want to hand it over to Sampath Kumar, who is from the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. He is the transport specialist there. So Sampath, good afternoon, and then over to you to address the gathering.
Thank you, Prashant. Am I audible?
Yes, very much.
Okay, thank you. So very good afternoon to all. And I really congratulate the shortlisted startups because there are a lot of startups who have applied for it. So close to about 180 to 200 startups have applied, out of which you are being shortlisted because of the skill set you have. I really congratulate the startups here. Second thing, I want to say that this is a wonderful and good opportunity for the startups to excel their skills, and it's like a marriage between a problem and a solution. So I always feel, and even this is the feeling of ministry, though the ITS and ITMS, we are talking for about 2 to 3 decades, the kind of impact it has created in the market is very less. But I strongly believe that the startup can able to change that, because the connect which you have with the local and the ideas which you have to come out with a solution is really amazing. And there are a lot of startups across the world, and mainly in the areas of water, wastewater, even in the mobility sector, you have come out with a very good ideas. So now this is one of the platform you can use it very well and come out with good ideas. We wish that. So why ministry is organizing this kind of workshop to the startup? That might be the question to you. So we are thinking that we want to align all the startups to the requirement of the solution. So you might be very good in the solution what you are arriving, but our requirement would be something different. So this workshop, so we have called for the experts in that fraternity. Say for an example, Ravi, even Prashant himself, they are really very good on the practicality of how the solution will work and what all the difficulty you may face. So this workshop will give you an overall idea about the particular problem statement you have chosen. So then you can raise the valid doubts you have, because you have some solution in your mind, but how to fit that solution to the requirement. So this is the thing that we're trying to do here. So I request all the startups to raise the valuable questions in your mind and clarify yourself. Why I'm saying clarify yourself in sense, once you get into the challenging mode, once you get into the progress, then you could not say that I have some clarifications on that. This is what that I thought that what you are recommend is something different. This kind of nitty-gritty should not occur at all. That is what the ministry is looking for. It should be a win-win situation for both of you. The startup has to excel and ministry has to give a platform, and you should not have any doubts in the overall flow. With this agenda, we have organized this kind of workshops. This workshop is not only for this problem statement. We are organizing workshop for all the problem statements with the different experts. The main idea is to clear all your doubts. So with this, I request you to raise valuable question and get yourself clear, align yourself to the problem, align yourself to the challenge, and come out with a very good solution. I am very pretty sure that you're definitely going to rock this challenge. We will come out with very good ideologies, I think so. So with this thing, I am just congratulating you again and make use of this opportunity which was given by the ministry. Thank you. Over to you, Prashant.
Thank you for that welcome address, Sampath, and that motivation for each one to work on this and excel. I see, from the attendees list, I know, in fact, some of the names like Rajesh, Ravni, Rajendra Jindal, Pratik, and so now I even know the names. So some of you, it might be a repetition. I apologize for that. If you have applied for more than one problem statement and got shortlisted, you are being invited multiple times. So the introductory session might be a repetition for you, but then we'll quickly get into the problem statement itself with Ravi. But before that, let me ask Smriti to kind of introduce us to the expectations and the timelines that you all are going to work with. Smriti, over to you.
Yes. So is my screen visible?
Yes, Smriti. So Smriti is from ITDP India. So they are one of the partners to the Transport for All Challenge. In fact, they are the core partners who are managing the entire organizational logistics and flow of this whole challenge. So over to you, Smriti.
Thank you, Prashant, for the introduction. So good afternoon to one and all present over here. So I'm Smriti from ITDP. And once again, congratulations to all the startups who have been shortlisted for the stage 2 of the challenge. So I'll be giving a very quick overview of the Transport for All Digital Innovation Challenge. This might be a repetition for the startups who have already been selected for multiple problem statements. I'll make it quick. So this challenge aims to bring together cities, citizens, and startups to develop digital solutions to improve public transport in all the cities. So these digital solutions are aiming to make the public transport both affordable, safe, and also convenient. So this challenge is divided into 3 stages. The first stage is on problem identification, where the cities identify the key recurring problems that the passengers face in public transport. We have successfully completed the stage 1 of the challenge. Now we are in the stage 2 of the challenge, which is the solution generation. So for the problems that the cities have identified in the stage 1, startups will be working for the same problems in stage 2 of the challenge along with the cities. And in stage 3, the cities and the startups will be implementing large-scale pilots for the same problems itself. So these are the broad 3 stages of the Transport for All challenge. Moving on, for the first stage, we had 7 distinguished steps itself for the successful completion of this challenge, starting with the formation of Transport for All Task Force, which is like a working committee with all the major public transport stakeholders, and almost 100 plus transport task force were formed across cities. And the second step was conducting the citizen surveys, and we were able to capture almost across 2 lakh citizen voices through these surveys. And then the third is on the bus staff, which is the drivers and the conductors, and then the IPT drivers survey. So this is to basically understand the issues of the operators itself. So cumulatively, almost 40,000 voices were captured through these surveys. So apart from this quantitative surveys, we also wanted to get some qualitative insights. So hence we conducted consultations with the bus drivers and conductors and also the IPT drivers to basically understand the issues that the operators face as well. And through all these data that we collected, we did a massive survey analysis to identify the problem areas. And as part of the stage 1 submission, each city submitted across 5 problem statements, and together we got almost around 165 plus problem statements across all the cities. And these 165 plus problem statements were curated by the Transport for All challenge team into final 8 problem statements. which will be showcased in the next slide. So these are the 46 champion cities who have successfully completed the stage 1 of the Transport for All challenge. And these are the final curated 8 problem statements that the Transport for All challenge team have curated. So we are conducting workshops for each of these problem statements. So day before yesterday, we had a workshop on the first 2 problem statements on rationalizing transit routes and also network digitization. And yesterday we had a workshop on bus and staff scheduling and also the bus maintenance scheduling. And today we are having a workshop on the transit performance monitoring tool, for which we have a data requirement from the city as well, which is on the GPS live tracking and electronic ticketing data. So congratulations to all the shortlisted startups again who have been shortlisted for this transit performance monitoring problem statement. And we have a set of timelines framed for the stage 2 process itself. The first is on the 20th April, where a guidance document for solution submission will be distributed to the startups. And then by the end of July, the startups will be developing the solutions with the cities. And also the states will also be adopting startup procurement policy as well. And then by the mid of August, the startups are expected to present the solution, beta testing, and also the implementation plan for evaluation to a jury of experts. And then by the end of August, the announcement of the final 16 winning startups will happen at an offline workshop. And then the reward distribution for these 16 winning startups will happen in 4 sets. The first set will be of 40%, and it will happen after the stage 2 winners announcement, which is estimated by the end of August. And then the next set of reward distribution, which is almost around 40%, will happen after finalizing the pilot solution procurement with the city, which is estimated to be around by the mid of September. And then the third set on 10% will happen while submitting the pilot project results, which is by the mid of November again. And the last 10% of reward distribution will happen after the announcement of the stage 3 winners, which is by the end of November of 2023. Similar to stage 2, in stage 3 also we have framed certain timelines. So by the end of September, the cities are expected to procure the solutions from the startups. And then by the mid of November, the cities and startups are expected to pilot the solution. And then by the end of November, the startups will present the pilot solutions to the jury of experts. And then by the end of December, which is by the mid of December, 15 December, the final announcement of successful startups or solutions will be showcased by Mohua on the 6th platform, basically to enable cities to procure the solution itself from the startups. So, and then these are the broad timelines which I just discussed in detail. Once again, I just want to reiterate to all the startups here that this is a huge opportunity for you guys to showcase your innovative skills. And I really hope that you'll make utilize of this platform to the maximum. With this, I would like to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Smriti, for that briefing on what is expected and what are the timelines. So all of you have about 6 months from now to get to the stage where you demonstrate your proof of concept or a MVP kind of a solution. And then we take that forward. There will be a jury which will examine those things, and then you get selected or to the next stage. Or for the award itself. So with that, let me get to introducing the rest of the panelists who are along with me. I have today's speaker, Ravi Gadipalli. He is also a consultant with wide experience. He's a PhD in transportation planning, and he is currently consulting with the World Bank and ADB. Earlier roles include working with UITP, and he was also heading the transport division at Shakti Foundation and various other roles before. So welcome, Ravi, to the show. And we are going to look forward to your presentation on the transit performance monitoring. Then along with that, we have Vinil Matthew from Startup India. which is one of the partners. He has helped set up the entire platform for you and for all of you to apply and then the process to take forward. Then we have Shiva and Vaishali. Both are from ITDP India, along with Smriti. They're colleagues of Smriti. So together we will try and answer as many questions as possible that you have regarding this problem statement. With that introduction, Ravi, over to you. You have about, you can take up to 20 minutes. We are on time, so about 20 minutes. But you can as well keep it interactive or however you prefer.
Yeah, thank you, Prashant. And thanks to ITDP and all the other organizing partners for the opportunity to interact. I'd also like to congratulate you along with others to reach this stage. And to prepare a solution by July 31st is actually a hectic task, I can assume. So it's just not even 4 months now. So I hope, so the big question to me actually is the kind of background people are coming from. Typically, technology startups have more of technology background people and lesser number of domain experts. So irrespective, I don't know all the companies and your teams, but the first suggestion, irrespective of everything else, is to first get somebody from a transport planning or engineering or some transportation background person in your team, at least to interact with the bus agency. At least they know what language to talk or what jargon to use to connect with them. So a lot of times when I generally interact with startups outside, that is my perception. I'm not saying that's what the perception is here. So irrespective of anything else, my first suggestion would be to get a transport planner on board or engineer to get going. So the topic today for me was to talk about transit performance monitoring. The introduction is already done. But this is a topic very close to my heart, and Prashant and I keep discussing it several times. So I have tried my hand at it a little bit, and there are others also across the world doing this. So I'd like to introduce you to what is already happening, so that you don't have to read up all the literature and do basic literature search on what it is all about. You can focus more on the solution creation. But you are doing transit performance monitoring. So first we need to understand what the transit agency does currently. The typical approach for Indian bus agencies right now is to allocate crew. I mean, the first prepare crew schedules, then vehicle schedules, and then the timetable of the route. I mean, I'm talking more from a state transport undertaking or a public sector agency perspective. Ideally, it should be the other way around. You need to first prepare a route timetable, then allocate vehicles to it, and then allocate crew to those vehicles. But because crew is the costliest component of the overall operation, cities try to first optimize that, and then we get the route timetable. And at the end of the day, the passenger gets shortchanged because you are focusing on the crew and not the service. And as a user standing at a bus stop, I'm interested more on the route than the crew. So that is the fundamental balance any public transport agency needs to strike. So I have certain set of resources. I need to provide a service which is satisfactory to as many users as possible, and a good metrics eventually. So that is the high-level objective of a public transport agency. So how do we enable that high-level objective through a performance monitoring system? So while so that is the left, the one I explained is what the organization currently does or what it should ideally do. The second set of thing is the overall objective for all of us here is to get more people onto the bus, right? So while monitoring the performance, we also need to look at the big picture of how to get more people into buses. There is a standard pyramid of passenger needs. So there are some called as dissatisfiers, without which you'll definitely not use the system. And then there are satisfiers, which are good to have kind of items. So basic things that people definitely need are reliability of the system, safety of the system, the speed of the system, and the ease of use. We don't have affordability here, but assuming that you think the bus is affordable enough, despite that, if all of these don't work, you don't get into the bus. So those are the first things. And then beyond that, you need a comfortable bus and experience, like the air conditioning or Wi-Fi. Those are higher level things which are good to have, but not essential. So broadly, this is what a bus agency tries to do or is supposed to do. So how do we monitor their performance against this, and how can we enable them to improve their performance? So when we talk about performance, we need to have quantitative things in place. So this is again a simple way to understand how a bus agency works. So I mean, this applies to many agencies for that matter. So first, there are inputs. Like you have a capital cost, there are buses, the depot infrastructure, all of that is provided. There are operational things like the fuel, maintenance, staff, all of those. Those are the inputs to your system. So by using these inputs, you derive some output, which is the kilometers operated or the capacity offered, reliability offered. So these are all the outputs of the service. And for these outputs, you get outcomes, which is to get people onto the system, to have more ridership revenue. And the other outcomes are how safe the service is. There are others also. I've just given a few examples. So when you are measuring performance, so currently most cities already track all of these inputs, outputs, and outcomes. So what they don't track is the metrics. If you take ratios of these outputs by inputs, outcomes by inputs, that's where there are innovative metrics coming out, which a lot of cities don't do. So as you are developing tools, you can think of these two items also. So one is the productivity metrics, like what output per input you got, so kilometers per vehicle kilometers traveled per unit cost or capacity offered per unit cost. Similarly, the service effectiveness. So you have provided a service and you derived the ridership, etc. So how effective is your service? So ridership for every kilometer you operated or revenue per kilometer. So revenue per kilometer is typically monitored, but you can still, that's a measure of service effectiveness. Next, the cost effectiveness. That if you have endless amount of resources, you can of course provide the best quality service, but there is a constraint on how much you can spend on staff, spend on fuel, etc. So outcome per unit input is also important. So these are different ways of structuring your tool as you develop the performance metric. So these are all the key performance indicators. In addition to the indicators, there are also, by combining all of these, there are methods like the data development analysis to grade one score. So I'm performing at a level of 7.1. I want to go to 8.1 or 7.7 or whatever. So there are tools to quantify these into a single value also. So that is what we can do. What cities are already doing is that a lot of cities are not new to this concept of performance monitoring. So what you should try to do is to go beyond what is already existing in the system. So what cities currently have are, this is where they use data really. So either to monitor the performance or to plan for operations. So monitoring is what happened in the yesterday, last week, last month, last quarter, last year, whatever. So you are looking backwards while monitoring and using that as an input for the future planning. It's not monitoring for the sake of monitoring what happened. So what they currently do, I mean, I work more with Bangalore and BMTC, so some of the language is BMTC specific. So bear with me for that. But I have tried to summarize what is available and what should happen. So there are MIS systems a lot of STUs have or cities have, where a lot of times the data is entered manually. They have some systems. I don't even, there is a Sintel based system for BMTC, the other operating systems based on which they are written, which is actually complicated. So there are, I mean, the indicators are not complicated. The retrofitting an old system to a upgraded version can be complicated. So cities just choose to keep that system alive and then do one more system parallelly doing other things. So that's a challenge you may encounter to get data from a different system into your tool. Then there are ITS reports, Intelligent Transport Systems. So in some cities, the vehicle tracking or the GPS system and the ticketing system. So broadly, these are the two components of a ITS project. There can be many more, but these are essential components, so the electronic ticketing system as well as the vehicle tracking system. So in some cities, there is only one vendor doing both. And recently, cities have gone for different vendors for different ITS components. So which means that there is more complication in terms of the data because different vendors have different data structures and their own data indices. So somebody may have route number 100 as route ID 10000 something. Someone else has that as a route ID of 2100 something. So that just the data indexation and matching data from different sources can get you into trouble. So I would first suggest that you focus on the data standardization and then move towards dashboards and stuff. So the thing is, my knowledge on this is based on activities happening outside India. So I thought today's session can focus on understanding what some of the other countries are trying to do, so that you don't have to reinvent the basic things. You can focus more on how to execute that for the Indian condition. So one thing, one of the recent initiatives I really like is the UK example. They have this system called as a bus open data service, where there are several private agencies, more than 500 agencies across the country, who provide data to a centralized source. And that source actually monitors all the data. They use it for several purposes. They use it to inform people on a real-time basis about when the next bus will arrive. But they also use that to derive performance metrics. This company called ITO World has done that. The contract is contracted by the government of UK to develop this system. So these slides are courtesy their presentation actually. So what they suggest is that while aggregating data from different operators across the country, in our case, it can be different vendors. Data standardization becomes quite important. So how to index the data and how to merge several data systems is important. What data standard to use is itself a big first question everybody has. So in case of Europe, cities use these newer data standards called NetX and Siri. I would suggest that none of you get into that at this point. You focus more on the GTFS data standard. It's a general transit feed specification. I mean, some of the Indian cities understand it already. They maintain at least GTFS in static format. GTFS can also be made available in real-time format. So using that to develop performance metrics, it makes your tool scalable. The idea of this whole challenge is to not just win the challenge, it is to hopefully help you survive beyond the challenge and upscale the solution. So a standard data-based solution will be easily scalable across cities. So at the end of the day, any bus operator does the same kind of activities. You have a bus, you need to operate it, you need to collect revenue. So there is, in a vehicle tracking data, you have the latitude, longitude, time, and the device ID of the bus ID linked to which route it is operating in. And then in a ticketing data, you have the origin, destination, fare paid, and maybe on route, which route and which time of the day the ticket is issued. So whether it is India or America, at the end of the day, any bus operator is trying to do this, provide service, get people, take revenue. So that way it is quite transferable, the knowledge. So what my suggestion is to use a GTFS based standard so that your solution works across cities. Next, this is actually the crux of their ITO World system, where they have data coming from different operators or authorities, where they collect it all under this bus open data service backend system, where they first clean up the data, then centralize all the data in one place. They have a transport model. And then the matching between the device and the route, etc. All of that happens at the back end, and based on that, they develop different outputs. One is the output for the developers on things like for real-time information and reporting of all the data, cleanness, etc. And then the analytics like kilometers operated in a day or the KPIs that I mentioned earlier. So they use this structured approach to first collect data in a standardized format, clean it up, and then derive the key indicators. So that's something for you to think about on how to standardize the whole process. Then moving on, the other interesting initiative I found recently is this US-based work done by MIT's Transit Lab. They have won the data challenge at the TRB conference also a couple of years back. So this is actually a very nice solution where they have a performance monitoring dashboard which is GIS based or spatially linked database where um, this is done for 2 cities in the US, Chicago and one more city, I don't recall. But for those 2 cities, they identified 16 metrics actually. So one thing I want to suggest to all of you is it is very easy to take one numerator and one denominator and you create one more KPI. So you take any data and you create one more metric. A lot of dashboards I see are people transferring their confusion onto the city. So the biggest exercise for you is to sit with your city and identify the top 10 or 15 indicators only and not reinvent the world. So I have seen very recent data, dashboards and by good experts which have endless number of KPIs eventually confusing everybody. So that way this helps the MIT Transit Lab thing. They have identified 16 key indicators. And for those, they can visualize those. If you see on the right, they have all these drop-down menus where you can select the metric, the level at which you want it at a stop level, at a route level, etc. And do you want the median value, the mean value, maximum, minimum, etc. Direction up and down direction of the route. Do you want it for the entire day or for a particular duration? But like when you choose flights on a website, or a train on a website, you can give the time range when you want to board or alight, right? Similarly, they have identified hours. This is very important for public transport because at the end of the day, transportation is a peak hour game. So whether it is a taxi operator, auto operator, bus operator, everybody wants to capture the maximum peak demand. So you need to look at your performance during the peak, during off-peak also. So having that time variation is important. So by using these, they have generated indicators, and this is just a screenshot I have. I don't have access to the actual dashboard. But what they do is you can basically change the background layers also in this because it is spatial in nature and GIS based. So you can have the route network, but also add other layers to it, like the ward map or job density. There are so many things which impact the outcome. So eventually, as a bus operator, you are only in charge of people on the bus. So if you want to improve, you need to look at people who are not on the bus. So you need to understand where the jobs are, people are, etc. So GIS based helps. So the other dashboard I really like is the Boston dashboard, MBTA, Massachusetts Boston Transport Authority, where they only start with only 4 metrics: reliability, ridership, financials, and customer satisfaction. After the presentation, I'll take you through the actual dashboard and show you what it entails. So they have a first a screenshot level, high-level overview of how the performance is, and then you can dig deep into each of those metrics if you want. Actually, let me just show that to you. I've also done a few things, a few cute projects, you can say at my end. I'd like to show some of them also. But just give me a minute. So just a minute. Can't share mine. Yeah, so this is the Boston dashboard I was talking about. So for example, this shows the overall reliability score. Suppose you want to get further into the bus details, you click on the bus details and it will take you through each and every route actually. So you can go further and understand at a route level, at a higher level. So the thing about a dashboard is that it needs to be flexible for different levels of decision makers. Actually, Laghu Parashar was supposed to be here, Along with him, we worked on a dashboard for Bhubaneswar, where we have metrics at various levels. What happens in any big corporate agency is that there is a CEO or a managing director type person, and then there are head of departments. Let's say in a bus agency, there is a head of operation, head of maintenance, etc. And then there are individual depot managers. So the depot manager is in charge of their own routes, whereas the operations head wants to look at comparative depot performance, and only exceptions need to be looked after. So if somebody is already performing well, there is no need to act on it. I don't want that information. I mean, the depot manager needs to look at that information to see if his depot is functioning well or not. As a city, if I have several depots, I'm assuming that I'm talking about the metropolitan cities like Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi, etc. There are 25, 30, 50 depots. So in that case, what I want to know is, or there are hundreds of routes in most of the cities, even in the smaller cities. So what I want to know is the top performing routes and the worst performing routes, so that I can act on them. So that is very important actually, when you don't do one big picture dashboard for everything. So in this case, what they do is you have bus, and then you can dig deep into all the different lines of bus. And further, you can dig deeper into each of the lines and their buses, and there are more details available. And then you can have it as a chart or a table for the peak, off peak, for the entire day, etc. So same with the ridership numbers, where you can look at ridership for different modes, for different hours of the day, month, etc. So this is the Boston example. The other one, the other MIT dashboard I was talking about, they have it in a public domain, but when we try to use it, there are some problems we encountered. Maybe we'll be able to solve them, or maybe they'll update the documentation now. So, but this Rope dashboard, I would recommend that all of you just go through it so that you don't have to reinvent a lot of stuff that is written here already. Then the other thing I want to show is some work I'm doing now with Bangalore Metro. So transit is not just bus transit, right? You may choose to work with some of the metros also, but metros are much simpler systems to monitor, where there are only few things you're monitoring, or few things I have data for. But the point I want to demonstrate here is to be a bit interactive. So in this case, you can hover over it and stuff. The interesting thing about this dashboard is that I work with a colleague who is developing it. He is doing it all in R as a package. So it is open source. Then there's no cost to the city as long as there's no calculations being done. So now we are getting into calculation mode also, where you choose different hours, etc. Then you need to buy a server and pay for it. A lot of times dashboards are built on systems like Power BI, which is fine, which makes your job easier as a developer. But for the city to pay for it can become expensive. But I always say that it is worth the expense, because you are monitoring your entire system, and you will need a robust system for it. So a Power BI type system will always be live. There's no development cost involved. So it's up to you really to provide the solution and get the city convinced. But if it is open source and low cost, that is easily scalable, because at the end of the day, no public transport agency is in profits. And so they always try to minimize their cost. So this Amsterdam dashboard is not working, unfortunately. So this also is quite interesting. Here you can look at the map and the charts, etc. So maybe you can check out later. Even the other one isn't working, unfortunately. The BODS, the UK one, has a website. I just wanted to show the website, ITO World, and on their website they give some details. You can check it out later. And another small thing we did is the Bangalore visualization of the demand. So there is this open source tool called FlowMap. Maybe you'll be able to plug it into your overall dashboard, where in the flow map, you can upload data and visualize it. At this point, it is free. I think they are coming up with a commercial version also. The free one, of course, has only limited functionality. But even here, you can just show the overall OD patterns, and then you can slide around to get the OD for different time periods of the day. So all of this is possible. So And there are other ones, like there is Kepler. I don't know if you know about Kepler.gl. That is another interesting one. So that is another interesting open source dashboard where you can upload data and visualize on a map. So you can think about such open source systems to actually reduce your development time and at the same time cost, of course. Yeah, this Kepler.gl, you can check it out later and see if it works. So this was originally developed by Uber and then made open source. So yeah, I think I've already taken 25 minutes. So this is where I'll end. Maybe if there are any questions, I can continue.
Thank you very much, Ravi. Wonderful. In fact, there is a whole lot that is being done across the world. Unfortunately, somehow, I think we are stuck in a rut, so to say, with the same hardwares and the same tools, which are mostly proprietary kind of stuff, and then we don't really end up with some standards. So that's probably where the challenge is, to consolidate data and then analyze and then show and get it to a point where it is actionable. So right now, transit agencies have tons of reports that they're getting with their existing systems, but none of them is amenable to action taking easily. It's not that we cannot, in fact, most of Ravi's, my job, and Laghu, who was mentioning, we're all actually using the data, using Excel to do all the analytics and then suggest improvements. And that's how we are able to reduce costs, increase riderships and all that stuff. But we all know that this could be done in minutes, or even rather in sometimes even in real time. Whereas now we are taking a couple of months to get to that kind of an analysis. And then it takes forever to convince the authorities to take action on that. And by then, the ground realities would have changed. So, in fact, we would be the biggest beneficiaries, so to say, if these tools are developed with the cities. So then we could just focus on service delivery improvements, rather than spending time on just gathering data and analyzing. So with this, I think Ravi's presentation was almost complete and self-contained in terms of the way it was answering every dimension of it. But if you still have any questions, you can raise your hands and then I can call upon for you to ask your question. So there is one question here that is about what is the softwares to be used from Rajni Nayak. Ravi, you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, that is what we don't know. That's why we need the startups, really.
Right.
The thing is that it's not the software. Like I said, there is Power BI, there is Tableau, so which are supposed to be dashboards, and you just need to plug in data and it will come out. So the thing is that they can be expensive, and for you as a startup also, if you want to get business, you want the money for yourself and not to pay to Microsoft or whoever else is managing, right? So if you can design it, that will be good. But if you have 3 months and you want to get to a solution quickly, you have these the ones I showed, like the Kepler.gl can be a solution to use GIS-based dashboards. So yeah, the real issue is not the software. The real issue is to understand data from your side, because data is quite complicated in bus operations. What you need to know is that there is a depot, there are buses, there are routes, trips, and stops. So at each level, there is a data indexation. So each stop has an ID, route has an ID. Then the schedule, in each route, there are several buses operating. Each bus has an ID. Then trip has an ID. then depot has ID. So each of these data points need to be aggregated into a neatly looking chart like I showed in other dashboards. So that is the complicated bit. So you need to understand the whole data flow well. And then what KPIs, what do you want to really monitor? So just shortlist those 10-15 KPIs and then get to the software discussion. Maybe you're all software experts already. That should be the easiest of the problems.
Yeah, well answered, Ravi. So the key would be to use simple tools which are not going to cost you more money rather than. So I don't think the transit agencies will specify what you should use and what you should not. It is more about understanding the data and then coming with that. Then I have Vikas Rumta.
So Ravi, I take your point on the cost, open source versus closed source. That's what we have been discussing, right? License-based product versus open source. Now, obviously, will we be expected to support it also, or is it more of a one-time? Because there are benefits and limitations, as you rightly said, of selecting an open source product versus a licensed product. Because if Kepler tomorrow becomes a license-based, or someone withdraws the support for Kepler, right? It's dead, right? So is there any guidance from that perspective on what you have seen working and what you haven't seen working in the government sector specifically?
So you are right that you may be expected to maintain the system also. So the whole startup, this Transport4All concept is that right now cities go with the big procurements so the big problems are solved, but the smaller problems are not solved. The big problem is to get a GPS device and a ETM device in a bus. So everybody is focusing on the big problem, but the purpose of that device is to actually generate some insights to improve operation, which is not a lot of cost, but it's more intellectual capability requirement. And there's limited investment there right now. So cities, I can say, so what cities do is that they club all of these items into the vendor cost, bid. So as a vehicle tracking system vendor, then they have to develop a dashboard also as per the current scope of work. But those are two separate skill sets. So what you can think of is you develop a good enough solution where the ITS vendor absorbs it in as their dashboard. So that would be the ideal target for you actually. So rather than expecting the city to come out with a tender, because what the city typically says is that I already have an ITS vendor who is being paid to do this. Why should I pay for one more vendor? I'm not saying everybody will say it, but you may encounter this question depending on which city you'll work with. So you target eventually being part of the ITS system if possible.
Yeah. Next, I have Pratik Tomar having his hand up. Pratik, do you want to ask?
Yeah, hello. Hi, this is Pratik again from Zupa. So my question is that how do we get access to sample raw data that could be plugged in to build further reporting?
So how to access raw data?
So let me take that question, Pratik. We are as we are working with you as startups for helping developing the solution. We are also working with the transit agencies which have come up with these problem statements to for them to understand what all data will be required and what are the dependencies for these solutions to work. So very soon we'll also on the back end we are working there and we'll start getting access to data. At least sample data for you to showcase your POCs or the MVPs, right? So then once you enter a contract with them or some kind of a pilot assignment with them, that's when you will probably plug into their data systems and then start showing results.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Then I also see one more question in the Q&A. One moment. How do we capture, this is again for you, Ravi, how do we capture customer satisfaction metrics on dashboards mentioned? This is again from Rajesh Ramani.
Yeah, so our cities don't generally collect customer satisfaction regularly. So if there's no data, you can't show it, of course. So there are proxy measures that instead of satisfaction, you can just. I was actually only last week looking at the TFL performance report or something. I thought they'll talk about customer satisfaction, but what they actually talked about are other indicators they capture on the number of safety incidents reported or thefts reported. So they monitor all of that as proxy indicators. If there are incidents reported in a bus stop, whether internally or others, so then of course that is an issue. And bus agencies also have these grievance or helpline numbers. So that keep getting a lot of data which nobody captures. I mean, that is seen as a one-time instantaneous thing that somebody called, you reply, and that is the end of the day. That's the end of the story. But you can look at that data. Actually, a lot of cities have this helpline number, and any data collected from there, you can translate that into, let's say, you can think about what are the complaints people have. So are they asking about timetable? Are they asking about some crew misbehaving with them? Or you can derive from the grievance management system.
Yeah, in fact, grievance management is also one of the problem statements that we'll talk about tomorrow. Because actually collecting passenger customer satisfaction, trying to do surveys is pretty hectic. You could do a small sample once in a while, but trying to do that on a regular basis is going to be extremely cumbersome. So trying to monitor some of these proxy metrics is a better way to handle this. And quite obviously, every time you see a reduction in complaints, and once you take an action, and there is usually a corresponding social media chat in favor of your action. You will see ridership increase, you'll see revenue increase, or some of these kind of things happening. So I think these are all to be captured together. So that, and I see one more question. Will you assign startups to city-wise and problem-wise? This is Rajni Nayak again. So we are going to see if we know the list of cities. There are currently 44 cities which have part of this challenge, who have come up with various items that are important to them. So not every city has every problem statement on their agenda. So there are some cities which are looking only for one solution. There are some cities which are looking into 4 or 5 different problem statements as their solution. So unless if there is a tie-up or tug-of-war where multiple people are liking to work on the same city, then there has to be some redistribution. But otherwise, I don't see that as so much of a challenge because we have 8 problem statements and 44 cities, and then hardly 44 startups that are working on these things. So I think you will have some reasonable choice, provided you can demonstrate something significant using the sample data in the POC level. Okay. What else?
One more question by Nirmala in the chat on the solution. Is the solution required to capture live GPS and driver data? So I would suggest to not get into real-time metrics. Better right now there is no dashboard, right? So better to at least start with historic data. So look at yesterday's data, last week's data, last month's data, whatever is reliable. Because data standardization and cleaning is a lot of effort. So better to look at maybe weeks later or at least one day later so that it's more manageable.
Yeah.
And driver attendance data, if it is available, you can show it. I mean, that's something the city has to decide on. If driver attendance is the biggest issue they are facing, I know some cities have that as an issue, then you have to show that. Otherwise, that should not be the biggest issue.
Yeah. And, when you build solutions also, one of the things, in fact, if you read the problem statement, you would also see that the solution that you're providing has to have the flexibility enough where the transit agency is wanting to tinker it to their convenience, right? It need not be fixed. Like, for example, I keep talking about this all the time. Microsoft provides MS Office. They are not giving you a presentation. They're giving you PowerPoint software. So you create your own presentation, right? So while you give templates, you provide templates so that it is easier to choose, but let the agency build their own presentation. That would be the level at which I would say you should go. And on the real time also, while it is much better to start with historic data or past data, if you are wanting to get into real time, there is nothing stopping you, but you'll have to choose your priorities better. That's all. Okay.
So that's a very important point, Prashant. I would like to add to that. So this thing about flexibility. So there are some standard indicators like cost per kilometer of operations, earnings per kilometer, etc., which are sacrosanct. You can't play with them. But then there are other things, like I was also mentioning earlier, a lot of times dashboards, people throw everything at it and then city is confused. So the via media between the two is that you have some standard indicators, but then allow for people to build their own KPI also. So we have some, in the case of Bhubaneswar, what was done was that, we have some data points which are like, you can choose them. There is a dialog box with some 10 indicators. And then you can choose what is on the x-axis, what is on the y-axis. You can drag and drop, and then it will build a chart for that combination. So let's say day of the week on the x-axis and ridership on the y-axis. I don't want ridership, I want ridership per bus. So you can choose that. So that kind of thing, if you have Power BI, Tableau type solutions, then it's very easy to do. But if you are building your own, then you need to build that capability also.
Yeah. Again, finally, the one that will be succeeding is the one which is the most easiest to use, most intuitive to use. So as much as understanding the data is important, I would say that ease of use of this solution is also that important for your success, because as those who have attended the session yesterday would know that the quantum of money involved in transit operations is huge. I mean, the numbers are staggering. Like, for example, each bus travels 200 kilometers a day, and then each transit agency spends about 50, 60 rupees per kilometer for operations, or sometimes even 80 rupees. But even if you consider 60 rupees and 200 kilometers, you're talking about 12,000 rupees expenditure just on running one bus. Okay. And if they have 100 buses or 1,000 buses, then you can see the math. So any efficiency, any insight that you can bring to help them optimize the service, help them weed out a poor service, or help them strengthen their highest earning service, or identify a demand point which is not as well served. So these kind of analytics are going to be performance indicators that will help them point in that direction and make it, make these intelligence actionable, is going to create huge dividends for the transit agency. And that's exactly where your market lies. So again, I'm not saying that only this solution helps. It's the set of all the 7 problem statements that are related to transit. All of them together can create huge impact in terms of their bottom lines for the transit agencies. So, okay. I do not see any more questions at the moment. So given that today was only one problem statement, I think we are ahead of schedule in getting done with the workshop. You're always welcome to send any more questions or concerns you have to the email ID contact@transport4all.in, and somebody, so that is there in the chat box already. So you can note that, and that can be the point of correspondence. We could always set up any more smaller workshops or smaller Q&A sessions if we feel required that some questions are relevant to everybody else also to understand. So we could do that as well. I see a hand raised from Rajesh again. So Rajesh, very quickly, if you...
Sorry, Prashant, I know we are out of time. Just one question to Ravi. Ravi, since you've been experiencing all the global markets as well for transport, are we saying that profitability per se is not important for any market, or is there a KPI against being profitable at the same time, customer satisfaction is also important.
The objective of a public transport agency is to not make profits, but at the same time, they want to minimize losses. So if you are making losses, if it is X or 3X matters, because that loss has to be filled in by the government. So you need to minimize loss, which means that you need to minimize cost and maximize revenue. So it is still important. The financial indicators are very, very important. I'm not saying they're not important. I'm just saying that whatever you do, there may be losses. So it's not. I was saying it more as a business prospect for you that if you make a tool and it's not like there are people coming out with 10 crore tenders for this or some stuff. So that's what I was.
Yeah. So right now, public transport is, in the survival mode. We want these tools to get them to a thriving mode. So it's not like it will ever become profitable per se by fare revenue itself. But nevertheless, there is always a possibility to identify sectors where there is a premium, where they can make profit and then use that for running services, which they may not make profit, but they are obliged to provide service. So those kind of things will help. And the second thing is that there is a whole lot of infrastructure that is almost decaying right now. So trying to improve the infrastructure, all those things will take a long time. So every change, every improvement that will help them reduce this gap between cost and revenues, the viability gap, that will be a big help in service delivery, because right now, otherwise the whole focus is on just managing the hand-to-mouth thing. How do I pay the bills for the next month? How do I pay salaries? And that kind of focus, right? So if there is actionable intelligence which can quickly give them dividends, then the focus is going to come onto the customers, the service delivery and all those things. So that's the important aspect. Okay.
Yeah, got it. Prashant, one small point I wanted to make. See, I was also discussing that maybe there is a demand for deluxe and premium transport in like India is a growing economy, right? And when we talk of public transport, we should consider if there is a market demand for deluxe transport where maybe the revenues are higher and profitability is also there. So,
right. Always. Yes. There's no doubt about that. So in fact, that's how most of the STUs work. So if you see the large southern STUs, which are all the southern states, they make some money out of their long distance operations, and then that gets consumed in the city operations. So that's how the best in Mumbai was created, where they were making money in the electricity business, and the profit was paid for the bus operations. So that was there as an earlier model. So even within the city also, there are trunk routes which are always profitable. Like there are some routes, it's a no-brainer that they make money on it, but there is a whole lot of others which are not money making, because they have to serve students, they have to serve early morning hours, and then you cannot have different size buses, right? So the bus size remains. So if I had the choice of having excess fleet, then I might be able to play with different types of buses, sizes of buses, and I'll send a smaller bus in the morning and a bigger bus in the peak hour. All that kind of stuff. So, but those optimizations are required. So in fact, if I have to give an example, it's like many years ago, I was, at one of the FedEx offices in the US, where we were looking at, the FedEx is tracking, this is a wonderful example, right? So through their technology systems, they're tracking fuel efficiency of different vehicles, because many of the older vehicles have lot lower fuel efficiency. So the mileage is low. So what they would do is that they put those buses for the core downtown service, where they're delivering. So where in the whole day, the vehicle covers not more than, say, 20 miles, because they go into one building and they have to distribute the posts across the whole building, all the 20 floors. So by the time it covers 10 buildings, the day is over. So they would send it. The most highest fuel efficiency vehicle, they will send it where the vehicle has to cross a long distance. So analytics could go to that level. So we are now talking about the initial where we talked about the KPIs and performance indicators, like visualizations, that kind of stuff, dashboards. But it can go to a whole different level where you are also saying what kind of resource should be matched with what kind of operations. so that it is most optimally used, right? So all these kind of things, there's a whole lot that can be done.
Yeah, that's a great example, Prashant. I think that is where the KPI should help us to see
Yes.
how we can, we
Yes.
can get to that level.
Yes. So that's where what Ravi was saying, right? You have a gross figure, but you should be able to drill down deeper where you identify, oh, okay, so this is the top 10%. This is the bottom 10%. So how do what is my action agenda for the bottom 10? What is my action plan for the top 10? So only once data is able to show us this, then comes, in fact, actually, Ravi's role, my role is actually in trying to get from there, once the data is showing this, what kind of actions, what kind of decisions we should take. So that is actually our role. But unfortunately, we are now mostly spending our time in doing this analytics itself. So we would love to transition from doing the analytics to actually decision making and decision support systems and that kind of stuff. Okay.
Good.
Yeah, long answer, I guess, but
No,
nice
that's where we come into the picture as startups to work with
Yeah.
you to get the analytics part so that you can focus on. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, all the guidelines and the functional requirements that are written out in the problem statement, you should look at it as general guidance, and then definitely go far beyond and further. But at the same time, keep your foot grounded in the sense to the realities that data is going to be extremely complex. Just thinking from a software perspective may or may not work. You may need some domain specialists who would help you with the process. To some extent, the Transport4All team can also help you, understand, do some workshops like this to kind of get you up to speed on some of the questions and all that stuff as you go forward. Okay. With that, I thank all my panelists. Thank you, Ravi, and for being here. And it was, always, whenever I see your presentation, there is always a new thing for me to pick up. So I made my notes as well. So I'll look it up. And best of luck to all the attendees, all these startups. We look forward to seeing you with the solutions as we go forward. Good evening.
Thank you.
Good day.
Good luck to all the participants for the challenge. We look forward to your solutions.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.
I end the call now.